Hello, welcome. I am Shavonda Jacobs-Young, Administrator of the USDA Agricultural Research Service, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the USDA Roundtable in support of President Biden's Cancer Moonshot Community Conversations. Today's roundtable is being recorded for those who cannot join us at this time. Now, over the next hour, we will focus on what we know best, food. Specifically, how healthy food and nutrition can prevent cancer and chronic diseases. The work we do in this space is critical to our country. I want to share up front that today is also important to me personally. I have firsthand experiences that drive me to pursue precision nutrition and healthy eating for a better life with a passion. I grew up in Georgia. We all know that parts of the South have some of the highest rates of obesity in the country. We know that obesity and a lack of healthy choices can lead to disease and premature death. And I understand the social, economic, and cultural issues surrounding food choices in the South. My family has been troubled with heart disease, diabetes, kidney disease, hypertension, and cancer. My father died when he was 51. My grandfather and grandmother on my mother's side died in their 50s. My dad's mother was passed away before I was born. My mom's sister and brother died in their 50s, and my sister, unfortunately, died very recently at the age of 50. Let me put this in context. Average life expectancy in the US is around 80 years old. So let's picture that. Now, as jarring as this may seem, it has been my personal experience and unfortunately may resonate with some of you on this call today. It could lead one to believe that there isn't much we can do, that longevity and high quality health is beyond our reach. So some may behave in ways that entrench this belief. Some people may think, I might as well eat what I want, drink what I want, and live how I want. That is the context I grew up in, a context inclusive of chronic diseases and cancer. It has been estimated that as many as a third of cancer cases could be prevented with diet and nutrition alone. Lifestyles with healthy dietary choices, physical activity, and weight management not only help reduce the risk of cancer, but may also contribute to the prevention of obesity and other chronic diseases such as type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. My point is that knowledge is power. Being more proactive in eating and overall well-being means, among other things, learning as much as you can about preventing the conditions for which you may be at risk. If knowledge is power, implementation is success. Some years ago, a group of students from low-income backgrounds participated in the Urban Gyms initiative at Ohio State University. The initiative was supported by USDA and the National Institute of Food and Agriculture's Children, Youth, and Families at Risk Grant Program. The idea behind Urban Gyms was to provide students from nutritionally underserved backgrounds with a hands-on opportunity to learn about nutrition and how to work it into their diets from seed to table. Not only did these students learn how to grow leafy greens on aeroponic towers and prepare and cook their harvest, they also acquired life and leadership skills, educating others in the community about healthy eating and donating produce to the homeless. Urban Gyms help these young adults change the context and circumstances of their nutrition. What we know about nutrition from science gives us power over what we eat, who we are, and how we age, and how we live. When people have tools, resources, and knowledge, they can better understand nutrition and are empowered to take more active roles in managing their health. Now, even though I grew up eating soul food in the South, and even though I know my family is predisposed for heart disease, diabetes, kidney disease, hypertension, and yes, certain cancers, I know that longevity is still possible for me. So today, for me, is about holding this initial conversation with a few key experts to talk about how agriculture and food can help prevent cancer and chronic disease through scientific research and targeted programs. Precision nutrition research can better inform USDA's nutrition security programs and policy. We have a unique opportunity, different from our extremely strong federal partners at FDA and NIH. USDA Nutrition Sciences focus on whole foods to optimize health throughout the life cycle, including the prevention of cancer. Our unique niche in USDA is our ability to use this science to inform USDA's targeted outreach, extension, education, and food delivery programs. Science without implementation is just a journal on a shelf. Uninformed programs are just exercises. But effective policies and programs targeted and informed through quality and objective science can be revolutionary. I hope today provides a good basis for many future fruitful discussions on USDA's distinctive 1-2 punch of science and programs working together to prevent cancer through healthy eating. By the way, we envision today being just the first of a series of conversations. So without further delay, I will introduce our speakers. After our 3 speakers set the stage, we will engage in conversation with you. So please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom console to share your questions and comments. Our first speaker is Dr. Sarah Blige, the Director of Nutrition, Security, and Health Equity in the Food and Nutrition Service at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Dr. Blige most recently served as a senior advisor for COVID-19 in the Office of the Secretary at USDA. She is a policy expert and researcher who specializes in diet-related diseases, food insecurity, and racial inequality with more than 175 peer-reviewed publications. She is on leave from her post as a professor of public health policy at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, the Kennedy School of Government, and the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study. Dr. Blige was also a White House fellow during the Obama administration, where she worked at USDA as a senior policy advisor for food, nutrition and consumer services, and with the First Lady Michelle Obama Let's Move initiative. Welcome, Dr. Blige.
Thank you, Dr. Jacobs-Young. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be part of today's day-long Cancer Moonshot event. As you heard, I'm Sarah Spleich, and I'm serving as the Director of Nutrition, Security, and Health Equity at the Food Nutrition Service, which is an agency within USDA. I do want to apologize for my scratchy voice. I have little girls and they had very exciting soccer games this past weekend and I am still recovering. Today, what I want to do is give a brief overview of USDA as a whole and highlight our key equities. I also want to explain the critical connection between nutrition and cancer. You know, one of the things that few people realize is that USDA has one of the broadest portfolios in the federal government. This is with respect to both our mission and our geographic diversity. So our portfolio curbs hunger and poverty. It makes credit available for rural development, which is where 1/5 of Americans live. It stabilizes domestic farm income, ensures the quality of the food supply, develops markets for agriculture, and conserves and protects natural resources, largely through firefighting. So you can think of USDA as fire, farm, and fork. We have approximately 100,000 employees and offices in every county in the country. This makes us one of the larger federal departments. We have 29 mission areas and staff offices, and 90% of our employees are outside the national capital region. There are a number of fun facts about USDA that I love sharing and had no idea about them until I heard them recently, which are USDA is among the top 10 banks in the US in terms of lending. We have 192 million acres of forest, which includes public and private land. And we have the largest firefighting force in the world and the 6th largest air force in the world. Now, a core part of our mission at USDA is delivering a suite of more than 15 nutrition assistance programs, which together serve 1 in 4 Americans over the course of a year. What these programs aim to do is to provide children and income-eligible people with access to safe, nutritious, and equitable food. And along with that is nutrition, education, and promotion resources to help individuals and families and communities promote healthy eating. Now, our programs, our nutrition assistance programs, reach tens of millions of Americans, including more than 41 million Americans through our Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is known as SNAP. Many of you may know it as food stamps. We reach more than 30 million children each day through our National School Lunch and Breakfast programs. We reach nearly half of all infants in the US through the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, which is known as WIC. And this is at about 99,000 schools and about 250,000 retailers. In fiscal year 2022, the nutrition assistance programs at USDA totaled $163 billion. Now, traditionally, they represent over 70% of our budget, but due to increased authorities during COVID, they currently represent an even higher percentage. Now, in addition to our nutrition assistance programs, we also invest more than $1 billion per year on nutrition education and promotion efforts. We also translate the dietary guidelines for Americans through MyPlate. And this is just some of the things that we're doing in the nutrition security space. So if you want to learn more, I encourage you to read a report about USDA's actions on nutrition security, which came out in March and provides a more comprehensive overview of our activities. Now, you might be wondering, and you heard some of this from Dr. Jacobs-Young, but you might be wondering about the connection between nutrition and cancer, and why is USDA hosting a cancer roundtable? So let's spend a few minutes on that. Each year in the United States, more than 1.7 million people are diagnosed with cancer, and almost 600,000 die from it, making it the second leading cause of death. The cost of cancer continues to rise and is expected to reach almost $240 billion by 2030. I want to leave you with one take-home point today, which you've already heard once from Dr. Jacobs-Young, and that is, as many of a third of cancer cases could be prevented with diet and nutrition alone. It is also the case that promoting healthy lifestyles, dietary patterns, physical activity, and weight management not only help reduce the risk of cancer, but may also contribute to the prevention of obesity and other chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. And research shows that eating a variety of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans, and other plant foods helps lower risk for many cancers. Now, optimal nutrition can also help improve cancer treatment, and healthy eating during cancer treatment can improve a variety of patient outcomes in the short and the long term. Our work at USDA directly relates to cancer prevention, since a core priority for our secretary, Tom Vilsack, is to promote nutrition security. What that means is all Americans having consistent access to healthy, safe, affordable foods essential to health and well-being. Now, many of you may be familiar with the term food insecurity, which has been studied for decades at USDA. Nutrition security builds on and complements our ongoing efforts to address food insecurity among all Americans, but it is distinct in two ways. The first is that it recognizes we are not all maintaining an active, healthy life. And the second is that it emphasizes taking an equity lens to our efforts. Now, we really should not talk about equity without also considering the context in which we live, which means we have to consider structural racism, which refers to laws and policies and entrenched practices and beliefs that perpetuate widespread unfair treatment and oppression of people of color with adverse health consequences. So a concrete example here that you can think of is residential segregation. My message to all of you is that structural racism is real. It reaches back to the beginnings of US history. It stretches across our institutions and economy, and evidence increasingly demonstrates how structural racism harms health in ways that can be described, measured, and dismantled. And this is where nutrition security comes in, and where we at USDA can make a difference when it comes to cancer prevention. Now, to guide us toward nutrition security, we've identified 4 pillars. The first is providing meaningful support from pregnancy to birth and beyond. The second is connecting all Americans with healthy, safe, affordable food sources. The third is developing, translating, and enacting nutrition science through partnership. And the fourth is prioritizing equity every step of the way. I do want to emphasize that all of our work is driven by research and grounded in science. It's woven into our policies, informs all of our decisions, and most importantly, it impacts every life that we touch, which is millions. Now, examples of the work that we do on the research side include the Human Nutrition Program at the Agricultural Research Service that's led by Dr. Jacobs-Young. It focuses on monitoring US food consumption and nutrient intake, among other critical areas of cancer-relevant research. Also at USDA, we have the Economic Research Service, whose work includes monitoring per capita food availability at the national level. I also want to highlight the role of USDA's primary extramural research agency, which is the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, which we call NIFA. They partner with the land-grant university system and government, private, and nonprofit organizations to support science, including identifying the underlying causes of diet-related cancers and developing culturally competent nutrition education to serve underserved communities. Now, besides research, our work is really driven by lived experiences, by our staff, by our stakeholders, including me, who grew up in a household that greatly appreciated the support of several of our nutrition assistance programs. So that would include WIC and SNAP and school meals. So I know firsthand just how important these programs are. I do also want to point out that we have significant work underway that will further advance nutrition security in meaningful ways for tens of millions of Americans. For example, we are updating the WIC food package with science-informed changes. That program reaches about 6.2 million women and children each year. We're updating school meal standards, which reach about 30 million school children each year. And we're initiating the next edition of the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, which serve as the cornerstone of federal nutrition policy. And we're doing that along with our partners at Health and Human Services. Let me leave you with two concluding thoughts. The first is that now is the time to lean in, since food insecurity and diet-related diseases are high. And diet-related diseases are rising due to the pandemic. They also both disproportionately impact historically underserved populations. And the second is that we are looking for ways at USDA to effectively and efficiently collaborate with external partners to promote nutrition security, and by doing so, to support cancer prevention. So we encourage you to reach out with your ideas. Thank you, and let me turn things back over to Dr. Jacobs-Young.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Blige. Our next speaker is Dr. Donald Warren, Associate Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Chair of the Department of Indigenous Health, Director of the Indians into Medicine and Public Health Programs, and Professor of Family and Community Medicine at the School of Medicine and Health Sciences at the University of North Dakota. Dr. Warren is the principal investigator for the Indigenous Trauma and Resilience Research Center at UND, and he also serves as the Senior Policy Advisor to the Great Plains Tribal Leaders Health Board in Rapid City, South Dakota. Dr. Warren is a member of the Oglala Lakota tribe from Pine Ridge, South Dakota, and comes from a long line of traditional healers and medicine men. Dr. Warren received his MD from Stanford University School of Medicine in 1995 and his MPH from Harvard School of Public Health in 2002. His work experience includes several years as a leader in many areas, and including serving as a primary care physician and chair of the Department of Public Health at North Dakota State University. Dr. Warren is also a member of the Stanford University Alumni Hall of Fame. Welcome, Dr. Warren. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jacobs-Young, and I really appreciate the kind introduction. I also appreciate Dr. Blige and the discussion and linking personal lived experience to these issues. So again, I'm Dr. Donald Warren. I'm originally from South Dakota and working here at the University of North Dakota. And I'm really pleased to be a part of these important discussions. So I can go to the next slide. And only have a few minutes for this discussion, so I really wanted to hit the highlights and the key points that we want to address when we look at promoting health and looking at food as a way to promote wellness and certainly to prevent chronic disease, including diabetes. So in a former role, I was also on the National Board of Directors of the American Cancer Society. So much of this information is available online at cancer.org. So I have the website listed here. And there's some very good information through American Cancer Society. So a healthy eating pattern includes foods that are high in nutrients in the amounts that will help to maintain a healthy body weight. And I don't necessarily like the one size fits all that everyone should be the same weight. It really should be personalized to what's healthy for you. And this is a discussion that you should be having with you and your doctor as well. And the diet should include a variety of vegetables. And one of the things that I've seen in my own practice and certainly in my own personal life and family life is that we don't always have nearly enough vegetables in our diet. And things that are dark green, red and orange, and fiber rich tend to be very healthy. The dark green vegetables have a lot of nutrients. The red and orange fruits and vegetables have what's called carotenoids, and those are very good for promoting health and preventing disease, including issues like cancer and diabetes. Also, we should have fruits, whole fruits, ideally, not things like just fruit juices, but eating the whole fruit and the fiber that's associated with that. And other healthy components of our diet should include whole grains and dietary fiber. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So a healthy eating pattern would limit or would not include processed meats. And When we look at processed meats, particularly processed red meats, we see clear association with some types of cancer, including colorectal cancer, prostate cancer, and pancreatic cancer. And when we're looking at red meats from a cultural perspective, in the areas where I am from, we have a lot of buffalo and a lot of venison, and those wild type meats are not as well studied, but also appear to be healthier than some of the other types of red meats like beef, pork, and lamb, in which we can see associations with some forms of cancer. We also should really limit or eliminate sugar sweetened beverages. That's just a huge source of calories without any associated nutrition. And we see sugar sweetened beverage consumption associated with chronic disease and certainly associated with obesity. We should also limit refined grain products, things like white flour, white rice, and really replacing those with whole grains rather than the processed and refined products that we see that are so commonly available. And unfortunately, highly processed foods also tend to be more affordable. So sometimes people in more impoverished conditions are consuming an unhealthy diet as a result. Can we go to the next slide, please? So we know that obviously good nutrition is associated with wellness, and poor nutrition can be associated with obesity and overweight. And ironically, when we have cheap foods that are not healthy, we get a lot of calories, but not a lot of nutrition. So quite often people who are dealing with obesity are also dealing with malnutrition at the same time. But we have clear scientific linkage between overweight and obesity and particular cancers, including breast cancer, particularly among women who have gone through menopause, colon and rectal cancer, endometrial cancer, also cancer of the esophagus, kidney, liver, ovaries, pancreas, stomach, and thyroid, as well as some forms of blood cancer like multiple myeloma and meningioma, which is a cancer of the lining of the brain and spinal cord. Again, this is all available on the American Cancer Society website. But if we look at this, we see a clear linkage between overweight and obesity and a whole host of different types of cancer. So the more we can do to try to address obesity, that's got to be a part of the Cancer Moonshot and addressing cancer prevention. Next slide, please. So we also have to acknowledge, and I appreciate the previous comments, that we have social determinants of health, and some people live within communities that are at greater risk for the onset of disease, including cancer. So if we have limited access to and limited affordability of healthy foods and poverty, then we're going to see health disparities in the areas of obesity and cancer and other chronic diseases. We also see widespread availability and extensive marketing of high-calorie foods and beverages that also tend to have lower nutritional value. So we do have to recognize that there's even market forces and advertising campaigns that do have an impact on what we're exposed to and certainly what our children consume in terms of media. And then in some of our communities, we do have barriers to being physically active for recreation or even having safe places for physical activity. For example, we've heard about inner city challenges, but also some of the reservation communities where I've lived and worked have challenges in terms of having safe places for physical activity. Next slide, please. So I've done a lot of work looking at health equity, and I appreciate the discussion about equity. And I really like this slide. I'm sure many of you have seen this or similar images. And on the left, equality is everyone getting the same package of services or the same recommendations or the same medications, for example, or even the same diet recommendations. And I think what we need to recognize is that people have different social circumstances. And as we move forward with this idea of promoting equity, we need to realize that some populations need unique services, and some populations might have cultural factors that need to be considered as we're addressing cancer prevention and health promotion. Next slide, please. And I really like this image because rather than just looking at a package of services to overcome a barrier, perhaps we also need to start thinking about the systemic barriers. And I would say that access to healthy food is a systemic barrier that's having an impact on higher rates of cancer in some populations and certainly higher rates of obesity in some populations. Could go to the next slide, please. So when we think about unique cultural factors, and of course I'm American Indian, and a lot of people think of fry bread, as traditional food for American Indians. And it's not. It's actually coming out of food programs for impoverished people. It's people doing the best they can with their commodity foods. And we have to recognize that this is not a traditional indigenous food. It's unfortunately one of the social outcomes of living in poverty and not having access to healthy choices. But this is a mixture of refined grains in the form of white flour and saturated fat in the form of shortening. And really, when we look at the scientific basis for disease, both of those ingredients are not good for health, particularly when it comes to issues like heart disease and cancer. So we also have to recognize that our approach to equity has to include unique programming and accounting for cultural differences. Next slide, please. And this is actually my last slide, last image is looking at a bison. And we learn a lot from the natural world in my culture and in other indigenous cultures. And what we observe is that the buffalo herds in this region, when we have a storm, like a blizzard, it's the strongest bulls that stand in front of the herd and face the storm and protect those who are behind them. And I would say that for those of us who are working in academics or who are professionals or might be working even at USDA and other agencies, that we really do have to take the lead and face the challenges head on, because there are people in our communities who are vulnerable and who have risk for disease, and they're really depending on us to make the right steps. So I'm very honored to be a part of these discussions, and I sure hope that Cancer Moonshot moves forward in a successful manner. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Dr. Warren. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And finally, we welcome our third speaker, Ms. Kate Mchale, a sophomore at Cornell University studying development, sociology, and education. Ms. Mchale is passionate about extension education, food systems, and rural community development. She's completed extensive coursework in agriculture, food, nutrition, and education. After graduation, Ms. Mchale hopes to pursue a career in extension education and community outreach. Originally from Hillsborough, New Jersey, Ms. Mchale is a proud 4-H alumna, having grown up as a member of Somerset County 4-H. During her time in 4-H, she's cultivated a love for animals, agriculture, and teaching. She continues to remain involved in 4-H both locally and nationally. Ms. Mchale led a group of 14 youth 4-H members through the process of researching, developing, and delivering a formal briefing to the National Institute of Food and Agriculture about the prioritization of nutrition security. On campus, Ms. Mchale is heavily involved in Alpha Zeta fraternity, a co-ed honors fraternity for students interested in the advancement of agriculture and the life sciences. She remains active in Somerset County 4-H as a junior leader and a volunteer during the summers in New Jersey. Welcome, Ms. Mchale. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I hope you're all doing well. I want to begin by thanking the White House, Cancer Moonshot, and the United States Department of Agriculture for hosting us today and for allowing me to join such an important conversation about the significance of nutrition in supporting our overall well-being. My name is Kate Mchale. I'm currently a student at Cornell University studying development sociology and education, and I'm here today to speak about 4-H youth development and its role in promoting nutrition security and education. Specifically, I am excited to share about my personal experience working with youth from across the country who are involved in 4-H nutrition education programs. 4-H is a youth development program that is part of each state's land-grant university system. It offers a way for youth ages 8 to 19 to gain valuable life skills through its unique learning by doing approach. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, through the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, partners with land-grant universities and the cooperative extension system through 4-H in a mission of education, extension, and research. 4-H is a program that welcomes youth with a diverse range of interests from any and all backgrounds. It provides extracurricular educational opportunities for youth in areas of agriculture, STEM, healthy living, and civic engagement. My own 4-H story began a little over 10 years ago when I joined the Somerset County, New Jersey 4-H Dog Club. As I grew up, I expanded my 4-H involvement by raising and showing alpacas, competing in public speaking programs, and joining every team leadership opportunity that I could take advantage of. It was the skills I gained and the lessons I learned as a 4-H member that pushed me to pursue agriculture, food, and nutrition here at Cornell. From a young age, 4-H taught me that through hard work and stepping out of my comfort zone, I could achieve whatever I set my mind to. As a member of New Jersey 4-H, I had an instant connection to Rutgers growing up. Working so closely with the land-grant university right down the road from where I lived helped me be confident from a young age that college could be in my future. Later on, as a high school student, 4-H allowed me to lead projects that I was passionate about to better my community in a way that no other extracurricular that I was involved in was able to do. At 16, I was able to lead an initiative with my dog club to provide a local firehouse with $600 worth of life-saving oxygen kits for pets that were rescued from fires. Even now as an alum, 4-H continues to play an important role in my life. This past March, I was able to speak to the over 200 youth attending the National 4-H Agricultural Science Summit in Washington, D.C., about the importance of agricultural education and advocacy. I've seen 4-H have a similar positive impact on youth from all across the country who have been inspired by their involvement in 4-H's science-based programming to take initiative towards achieving nutrition security and healthy living in their communities. 4-H offers youth-centric programming that really values the opinions and voices of the youth it serves. It's because of this focus on positive youth development that 4-H is so effective in creating change within communities. 4-H provides an environment where passionate young leaders can address the problems in their communities with the help of positive youth-adult partnerships, encouraging mentors, and support from USDA NIFA and their land-grant university. This March, I had the opportunity to serve as the Collegiate Roundtable Facilitator at the National 4-H Conference in Washington, D.C. National 4-H Conference is an annual civic engagement conference that provides an opportunity for youth to express their voice and opinion on important issues at a national level. With guidance from NIFA, I facilitated a roundtable group of 14 4-H youth members representing 12 states from across the country. Many of these youth are award-winning 4-H members in project areas relating to nutrition, food, and agriculture. During the conference, the youth and I participated in about 12 hours of research, discussion, and preparation to deliver a formal briefing about how NIFA could better integrate youth voice into its efforts to prioritize nutrition security. It was fascinating to see how 4-H has served as the catalyst for so many of these youth to develop programs in their home states to promote nutrition. One of my students noticed that youth in her community were struggling with food and nutrition security. So through 4-H, she developed a series of healthy living workshops for youth and their families. Each session, she walked students through making a simple, affordable, healthy recipe. And at the end of the workshop, every family got to take home a full recipe book with nutritious meals that had easily accessible ingredients. This program empowered attendees with the knowledge and tools and resources necessary to go home and make healthy choices themselves. Another one of my 4-H youth members led a container gardening initiative at her school because she noticed a lack of healthy, fresh options in the lunchroom. She decided to take it upon herself to fix this. Not only did she provide her school with healthier foods for their lunch options, but she shared her knowledge of gardening and agriculture with her classmates, allowing them to take those same practices back home with them. Oops, sorry, my microphone fell out. If I learned anything during my time at the National 4-H Conference, it is that we need to listen to and lift up our youth voices. Youth, like the ones I had the pleasure of working with in March, want to create change and have incredible ideas. They're simply waiting for an opportunity to share them. So I challenge all of you today to listen to our youth. Look at how you're incorporating youth voice and perspective into your programs and decisions, because change can only happen when we recognize what every voice has to say. During our roundtable discussions, the 4-H members came up with incredible ideas to better integrate good nutritional practices into their communities. We discussed decreasing the stigma that can often be associated with things like visiting a food pantry. And we also explored ways to ensure that those food banks are receiving good, nutritious foods to provide patrons with healthy options and the dignity they deserve when they're going to get groceries. The students explored existing nutrition programs like SNAP Ed and discussed how they could expand their nutritional advocacy through 4-H to benefit the greater community. We found that youth are excited to take care of their health and explore nutritious options, but a widespread lack of nutritional education and accessibility often act as barriers. Our nation is very lucky that through 4-H, We have millions of passionate, enthusiastic youth who are dedicated to making a difference in their communities. 4-H has incredible potential to increase community nutrition education, and its programming empowers youth to set the example for those around them. I'm so excited to share more information about my experience working with 4-H nutrition programming today. And I'm confident that 4-H is the program that can empower communities across America to take charge of their nutrition security and find a passion for healthy living. I saw this firsthand at the National 4-H Conference, and I'm beyond excited to see where 4-H can take its nutrition education programming in the future with your support. Thank you all so much for your time and attention, and I'm looking forward to continuing our conversation today.
Thank you, Ms. Mchale. Thank you to Drs. Warren and Blige as well. So now it's time to move on to some discussion. So Drs. Blige, Ms. Mchale, and Dr. Warren, thank you for fantastic thoughts on where science and our programs meet, the role youth can play in helping families and communities, and the links between equity in food and health. I'm honored to be able to help the president on his Cancer Moonshot and greatly appreciate the work each of you and all of those attending today can do to help us achieve his ambitious goals. So I'm excited to kick off this dialogue among our 3 esteemed panelists. And for those of you online with us today, please submit your questions through the Q&A function. We look forward to having an opportunity to address as many as possible. So now let's start with the first question. So I'm in USDA, I've been here for 20 years, so I think nutrition all the time. We have 6 nutrition centers in ARS, and our folks and our colleagues across the department are doing wonderful work in nutrition. But can you all help me understand why nutrition is often overlooked when it comes to the prevention of treating cancer? And so I'm gonna start with you, Dr. Warren, as our medical doctor.
Sure, and I think we're doing a better job in recent years of understanding the role of nutrition in the onset of cancer. But when I was in medical school back in the early 1990s, nutrition was not a major focus of our training, quite honestly. And I think we had maybe a half-day discussion on nutrition and health when I was in medical school. Not nearly enough information. So we need to be thinking of food as medicine, and in some cases, food as an exposure to toxins, depending on what types of food that we are eating. So I think we're doing a better job now than we have done historically, but it has not been an adequate component of medical education historically. And I think that's one of the reasons why it has been overlooked. But I'd love to hear from Dr. Blige as well.
Yeah, Dr. Blige.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Warren. So I really appreciate this question and would say that outside of my time in government, this is my second tour of duty in the federal government, my professional career has largely been in academia. And as an academic, I will admit that I've been frustrated to see relatively low investments in nutrition research, even though, as we talked about on this panel, diet-related diseases are a leading source of poor health in the US. So I'm optimistic that the COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated why addressing food nutrition security and major diet-related diseases and disparities is fundamental to our nation's health and prosperity. And today's roundtable, in support of the President's Cancer Moonshot, USDA's pivotal focus on nutrition security, and today's announcement by the President about the second White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health all demonstrate to me that we are turning the tide on maximizing the role of nutrition in health promotion and disease prevention. And that includes cancer prevention and treatment. But I would say it's up to us to really seize this moment and ensure that we develop and execute a bold plan that helps the president, helps our nation see the value in promoting nutrition as a key pathway towards ending cancer, as well as achieving other key priorities of the president, like advancing racial equity. So from where I sit, there are so many possibilities, but we have a lot of work to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. I like your thoughts on nutrition education and promotion. I think we all recognize how difficult it is to change eating behaviors and being conscious of the social determinants of health. So please share with what one thing you'd suggest that we all hopefully can do to encourage all Americans to eat more fruits and vegetables and other nutritious foods. So I'm going to start with you, Ms. Mchale, as a youth, perspective on our panel. What are some things we can do?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really difficult to break habits once families and communities have already established what they like to eat and what their diet typically looks like, which is one of the reasons that I feel it's so important to really involve youth in these types of nutritional decisions, because we want to start teaching this from a young age. And I feel that one of the best ways to really encourage adoption of these healthy habits would be really by highlighting the science behind the choices and providing communities with the knowledge necessary to understand the significance of the decisions they're making. We spoke about this a lot with my 4-H group of students and how the science-based programming in 4-H really aims to provide a deeper understanding of nutrition. I really believe it's time to reevaluate how we're presenting these healthy choices and if we're presenting them in a way that's based in science, especially to young people. So instead of teaching youth, for example, that they can't leave the lunch line to go eat with their friends until they take an apple, let's talk to them about why they should want to take the apple, what type of vitamins and minerals does it contain, and why are those important for your body? So by using science-based education to our advantage, I think we could really encourage communities to make better informed decisions. And by starting with youth, that could just spread through their family and community.
I love that. I love that. Dr. Warren, how about you?
Yeah, I think we need to promote healthy eating, obviously, but one of the ways to do that is to make the healthier choice the easier choice. And what I've seen in the communities where I work is that quite often the healthier foods are more expensive. And when we have impoverished populations, they may want to have a healthier diet, but just don't have the means to have access. So as we look at ways to prevent cancer and to promote health, we need to make the healthier choice the easier choice for populations, because it's just a shame when people want to make a healthier choice and have a better diet, but they just don't have the means to afford it.
Absolutely. Dr. Blige, did you have anything to add here?
In the interest of time, no, I won't add anything here, but thank you.
Thank you. So besides ending cancer, the president is committed to advancing racial equity. It's been very exciting to see progress in this area, including the first equity commission at the USDA. I would love for the panelists to share their thoughts on how we can integrate our efforts to advance equity with our efforts to end cancer. So I'll start with you, Dr. Blige.
Thank you. So I would say that we've received a lot of positive feedback at USDA about our focus on nutrition security and the recognition about the role that structural racism has played in the current health and nutrition profile of the country. And as I mentioned, me and my siblings participated in a number of USDA's nutrition assistance programs when we were young. So now it's really an honor to work at USDA to promote nutrition security and health equity. At the same time, I recognize that we have a lot of work to do to achieve the Secretary's vision of ensuring that all Americans have equitable access to healthy, safe, and affordable food. And we have even more work to do to realize the President's Cancer Moonshot. Now, I love quoting Maya Angelou, so I hope you'll permit me to drop one of my favorites. So she wrote, "We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty." And right now, I would say that it is a transformational time in our country. With this administration, within the Department of Agriculture, ending cancer is closely related with advancing nutrition security. And at USDA, we are leveraging all of our assets to help. And we hope to find meaningful ways that organizations outside of government can help us to advance this work.
Absolutely. I think we have a wonderful capacity to bring all the important players together. Dr. Warren, how about you on this question?
Well, there are a number of programs through the USDA that have a big impact on reservation communities for American Indians, and certainly looking at the food distribution program on Indian reservations. And I'm very pleased to see that there's been more traditional foods and healthier food options within the commodity food programs. And I think that's an area that could be highlighted even further as we advance science and knowledge and really understand that connection between diet and cancer and other chronic diseases, that we should be looking at that as a nutritional and medicinal opportunity to really promote health in populations that are vulnerable and impoverished.
Thank you so much. So now we're going to move to a couple of questions from the audience. So here's a question. There is an increasing hunger among school-age kids in my community with some access to food at school. There is a backpack program, but it is inadequate and needs funds to meet needs. Can USDA target funding to these kids? I'll turn that one to you, Dr. Blige.
That's a great question. And I would say that we are doing a lot at USDA to make sure that we can not just put food within reach for families, but put healthy food within reach. So one of the key things that happened back in the fall of this school year, so several months ago, is that we, at the charge of Congress and the president, we did what was called reevaluating the Thrifty Food Plan. That essentially is the basis for calculating the size of the SNAP benefit. SNAP stands for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It serves about 41 million Americans each month, and it is one of our most essential tools to helping feed families. What that reevaluation did is it increased the purchasing power of that benefit by about 21%, which was hugely significant because it was the first time that that calculation based on the Thrifty had been updated in 4 decades. So what that essentially does is it puts healthy food within reach for families. And that is going to help school children. It's going to help their families. It's going to help their grandparents. And so that is probably one of the most significant things that we've done for kids. Other things that we're doing is that we are in the process of strengthening school meal standards to make sure that when kids eat part of the National School Lunch Program, the National School Breakfast Program, that they are getting foods that are going to promote their health and well-being. So that's another important step that we're taking. In the interest of time, I won't go into all the other things that we're doing, but appreciate this question and can assure you that we are thinking hard about how to do more.
Right. You guys have been just so super impactful. Dr. Warren, this question is for you. You mentioned obesity. Is it only obese people that are at risk of cancer? And as a medical doctor, how do we define obesity?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just obese people who are at risk for cancer. So, but the science shows us that overweight and obesity is clearly linked and associated with certain types of cancer, the ones that I had listed. But anyone can get cancer. And we know that there are some foods that are protective and some foods that can put people at greater risk for cancer. So in terms of defining obesity, there are standardized processes, including body mass index. But as I had mentioned, I don't really like the one size fits all approach to defining these things. So we can look at those trends in body mass index and have a cutoff maybe of 25 to 30 as that body mass index. But I really think that it's something between the individual person and their doctor. Hopefully you have a good primary care physician that you have a good relationship with, and really identifying what is the ideal weight for you. And having healthy whole foods has to be a part of health promotion as well as physical activity. But anyone can get cancer, not just people who are obese, but we do have scientific evidence correlating obesity with some types of cancer.
Thank you so much for that. And that's one of the beauties and some of the goals of the precision nutrition research programs is really to be more cognizant and inclusive of many different cultures, many different factors as we develop, some of our approaches toward nutrition. And so that's a very, very good question. So this question is, nutrition education is absolutely key and an important part of prevention of diet-related disease. However, we have nutrition educators who have been out in the community for a long time, and it's not easy to change behavior. Do you think it's time for nutrition education to be supplemented with other things like marketing? Maybe those healthful foods attractive the same way as a Snicker is made attractive. I don't know, a Snicker looks awfully good, but yeah, so how do we, so who wants to take a stab at that one first? Thank you, Dr. Warren.
Yeah, and that's a big area of focus in public health now with higher education and public health. And of course, we have a master public health program here. But the way we communicate and the way we message things, it's very important. And I think historically, we haven't done as good of a job in public health at social marketing as other sectors have done. So I really do believe we need to adopt some of those marketing principles and public relations principles and how we advertise health promotion. I think we have a lot to learn from the private sector. So I appreciate the question.
If I may, Dr. Jacobs-Young, I could also add, So it's a great question. And one of the ways at USDA that we're thinking a lot about, and we're doing a lot on nutrition education, is through our SNAP education program. So what that program does is it historically has been direct education. So someone talking to me as an educator, but that's been transformed over the past decade or so to be broadened to say, we don't just care about direct education, we also care about policy, systems, and environmental changes that are actually going to promote obesity prevention and improve healthy behaviors like increasing fresh fruit and vegetable intake, increasing physical activity. So through SNAP Ed, there are thousands of implementing agencies. And the key here is that those implementing agencies allow us to really diversify our footprint, both geographically and in terms of the different populations that we reach. So there's more that we can do there, but the key is that we have gotten the green light for quite some time now to use those funds to not just do direct ed, but to try to push information at people in ways that will be more effective. And then apart from SNAP Ed, we also have other types of education programs, but just want to acknowledge it's a great question. It's an area we can do more, but even if we did a whole lot more, I think we have to be honest with ourselves and say that what we're doing is a drop in the bucket compared to the influences that people receive from marketing out in the world. And so this is where we have to think about there's a role for the federal government to do a lot. And there are other areas where we need folks to come in and help us push toward both cancer prevention and nutrition security.
Great. I have a quick question for you, Kate. You know, one of the things that we often think about when we think about 4-H is we always think about rural communities and kids in rural communities. And I know that the demographics of 4-H have changed over time. So how do you see 4-H and the youth playing a critical role in, for example, the efforts we just talked about, you know, helping to change behavior, increase in being inclusive in the materials that we develop and deliver?
Yeah, so inclusivity and equity is such a big focus of 4-H, especially in the past few years. We're really working to draw all youth in because 4-H does have a big reputation of just being farm kids. But personally, I'm from just the suburbs of New Jersey. There's farms in my town, but I never grew up on one. I just loved showing dogs, so I joined 4-H. And I think by really beginning to highlight the stories of those youth that come from urban communities or suburban communities who don't fit the typical mold could be really effective because all youth want is a place to feel heard and seen and a place to belong. And 4-H is that place for them. And it was for me growing up, and I've seen it be a place for so many of the youth that I work with. So I think really by just incorporating more marketing to really highlight that although this program was once completely agricultural, now anyone in any county and any community can participate in any program they want. And one of those programs happens to be the excellent nutrition education one.
I love it. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're at the end of our time together as a panel. However, I do want to have you address one last thing for me. Can you share one key takeaway that you hope the roundtable participants would take back to inspire their contributions to our efforts in the Cancer Moonshot? All right, we'll start with you, Dr. Blige.
Yes, ma'am. So first I'll say that I think Kate has illustrated the importance of why we need to engage in youth. And the second is that if I could leave one thought with you, it's that now is really the time to lean in so that we can together promote and elevate nutrition security, and by doing so, to help end cancer.
Awesome. Dr. Warren.
Yeah, and I really appreciate these discussions, and clearly we need more time to adequately pursue them. So hopefully we'll have more discussions in the future. But I think for me, a key takeaway is that we have a lot of scientific evidence that whole foods and healthy foods can prevent cancer, and they're associated with good outcomes. I think what we really need to do is ensure that anybody who wants access to healthy food should be able to get access to healthy food.
Thank you so much. Ms. Mchale.
I think my major takeaway would be that I hope everyone can kind of think about afterwards how you're engaging with the youth in your life and what the real power of youth voice and opinion is in building strong families and communities. Really just listen to the youth around you because they have an incredible vision for this nutritionally secure and healthy future that they want to live in. And it's really important for us to really lean in and help them build that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, panelists. Now I have the honor to introduce Deputy Undersecretary Stacy Dean, who will provide closing remarks today. In her role as Deputy Undersecretary for USDA's Food, Nutrition, and Consumer Services, she works to advance the President's agenda on increasing nutrition assistance for struggling families and individuals, as well as tackling systemic racism and barriers to opportunity that have denied so many the chance to get ahead. Prior to joining President Biden's team at USDA, Ms. Dean served as the Vice President for Food Assistance Policy at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. She directed CBPP's Food Assistance Team, which published frequent reports on how federal nutrition programs affect families and communities and develop policies to improve them. In addition to her work on federal nutrition programs, Ms. Dean directed CBPP's efforts to integrate the delivery of health and human services programs at the state and local levels. Dean has also made significant progress in strengthening the public health impacts of our federal nutrition assistance programs, and she is only getting started. Deputy Undersecretary Dean, it's my pleasure to hand off today's Cancer Moonshot Roundtable discussion to you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Dr. Jacobs-Young, and thank you for moderating such a wonderful panel. I think you asked me to do two things. One was to just round up some of what I heard across all of our speakers and then leave folks with a few thoughts. So let me just say I was incredibly impressed with the positivity and energy that this panel represented, probably best represented by Ms. Mchale. The Cancer Moonshot is an extraordinary goal, right? It's a really important goal. It's a tough goal, and yet everyone here today was thinking through the ways that we can contribute to solving the problem of cancer and our part, the contribution of our part through food. So. And really want to thank Kate for her inspiring us on making sure to include the perspective of youth, both for the incredibly specific suggestions that she put forward, but also I think the energy and aspiration. A few other themes I heard, I just want to come back to. Fundamentally, food and diet are critical to optimize health, including cancer, right? That all of us said that, and that is unequivocally true. So we have a lot to do on that front because it's so important that we promote better food and better diet with respect to addressing cancer. We also heard that food systems are vast and complex, and they play out differently for different communities and different individuals, different social circumstances. So we have big systems issues to address and deal with, particularly when it both with the food that we eat and also the really important equity issues that several of the speakers talked about. But it's also true that there's also individual empowerment is so important to this. So heard a lot about making sure that people have the information, the resources, the know-how, and the capacity to address their own food and health issues. And then I guess I'll just end by saying what I heard a lot is USDA has a critical footprint to contributing to the Cancer Moonshot goal. The extraordinary research portfolio that Dr. Jacobs-Young addresses, and of course all of the work that we do at the Food and Nutrition Service and all the lives that we touch. And it's one of the reasons that I'm just so incredibly proud to be a part of this department that invests 70% of our budget to ensuring access to healthy and safe food for tens of millions of Americans in our programs. We reach 1 in 4 Americans through the nutrition assistance programs, and their collective health and well-being is a responsibility that we take very seriously and clearly can plug into this Cancer Moonshot role in a powerful way. And of course, there's the work. I wish, Dr. Jacobs-Young, we could have heard even more from you about the considerable and incredible work that you're leading in research, education, and extension, all of which we can pull together and harness in our efforts to combat cancer. So with virtually no time remaining, let me just say, sorry. What this means for USDA is that we're in the business of fostering healthy eating and overall well-being and researching how to do that even better. And this conversation just underscores the incredible impact that good diet has on good health. Nothing drives that point home more than the fact that according to the research that we heard from our speakers say, 1/3 of cancer cases could be prevented by nutrition alone. I mean, think about that for a minute. Millions and millions of our fellow Americans could avoid the fate of cancer if we could just harness the power of nutrition. And that's what we intend to do here. So my hope is that you each walk away from today with a broader understanding of USDA, our considerable strategies to encourage nutrition security across communities, as well as some ideas for how you might plug into those efforts. There's no question that the president's Cancer Moonshot is ambitious. Yet, like so many of us who have suffered or lost loved ones from this terrible disease, the president is driven to pursue bold solutions. And so we are too at USDA. We owe it to every person who lost their battle to this disease, every person living with this disease, every person who may one day contract it, and all of those who love them, to continue working tirelessly. And for me, I'll just say that is my motto. My efforts will be ceaseless in the pursuit of this goal. So thank you for joining today's conversation and considering meaningful ways to help us fight cancer, and for this incredible panel for inspiring and motivating us towards this goal. So with that, Dr. Jacobs-Young, and a little over time, I'm sorry, I will turn it back to you.
There's never enough time to talk about such an important topic. So thank you, Deputy Undersecretary Dean. Thank you to Drs. Blige and Warren and Ms. Mchale. And thank you to all of you who participated today. We know that everyone has extremely busy schedules, so we don't take it lightly that you chose to spend this time with us. Please look forward to future conversations, and we look forward to taking all of your questions and feedback that we received today and using it as we plan future engagements. So thank you again. This concludes today's community conversation.